this is, I guess, part 2 of that first video I just put out. And if anybody's wondering, yeah, I'm driving, I'm holding my phone. I don't have one of those, phone holders. And even if I did, it probably would have too much shake. And I know the angle that I'm using right now to make this video is really crappy because I'm doing this down, upward. So it's not the most flattering, but it'll do the trick for now. So, video cards. Or more specifically, frame rates, frame times. So for the longest time, I've always thought that frame rates was king. You go out, you get you go out to YouTube, you take a look at these reviews. Oh, this is the king of the hill. You're gonna get 60 FPS, 75 FPS, 100 FPS, 120, 144, etc., etc. So I always try to go ahead and go out and buy the baddest card that I could get, and that's led me to make some poor choices. Not that I haven't gotten what I wanted, but it's led to some poor financial choices, which I regret. And the point to that is, let's take something like a 2080 Ti, right? And the reason why I'm choosing that card is because, one, I'm familiar with it. That's currently what I have. I have an EVGA XC Hybrid 2080 Ti. I got it overclocked to 2115 megahertz. And usually, once the heat settles in, it goes down to 2100 megahertz. Exactly. And I actually have it down undervolted to about 1.043 millivolts, which is not a whole lot. It keeps it cool. The radiator already keeps it cool enough as it is, but it draws a little bit less power. So let's talk about that. I had a couple of months ago, I was playing Assassin's Creed Origins, and due to me moving, I had to go ahead and pack up my G-Sync monitor. Now, G-Sync is gonna be I'm gonna make a whole different video about that, right? But I had to pack away my G-Sync monitor. Now, it's a ultra-wide, Predator X34P, and I'm not bragging, it's just, that's what I got. So, on that monitor, buttery smooth, I'd average 100 FPS, 100 something, high settings, right? And I had to pack it away. For a couple of weeks, I was playing on a BenQ 2730Z, which came out 2015, I think, and that does not support G-Sync whatsoever. So I was playing that game, and it felt horrible. It's a 1440p monitor, right? Just a 2560 by 1440p. So you would think that with the increase in FPS, because you go from an ultra wide, it has more pixels, you decrease to just a regular 16 by 9, you get more FPS, that it would feel a whole lot smoother. And it was awful. It was bad. Playing on that monitor sucked. And that was because I kept getting these stutters while I was playing, and the frame rates were 120, 130, and I could, for the life of me, could not figure out why the experience was so horrible. So then I stopped playing the game for several days, trying to figure it out. Went online, started comparing frame rates to frame times. Right, so frame times in its most basic form, and again, I'm not an expert, so take what I say, for a grain of salt. go do your own research on it, right? But frame times is the time between one frame and the next, right? So I'll just give I think at 144 hertz, I believe, again, don't quote me, it's supposed to be a 6 millisecond or 8 millisecond between one frame and the next. All things being equal, if you consistently had 144 hertz, you would display a new frame at that interval, 6, 8 milliseconds, whatever the case might be. Here's what was happening. I was getting above 60 FPS, above 100 FPS, 120, but the frame times kept doing this, right? 6 milliseconds, 8 milliseconds, 12 milliseconds, 24 milliseconds, 12 milliseconds. It kept going like this. So what would happen is, I surmise, is that before the next frame is ready to be placed in queue, right, one of two things was happening. Either one, it was already in queue, or two, it was the current frame was being stretched out because of the frame time. So because of that, it wasn't a smooth transition, and that's where you get these stutters. So on a 2080 Ti reaching above 120 average FPS on a AAA title, I had to lock my frame time, or lock my frame rates to 80 FPS. Why? Because that gave me a consistent, and when I mean consistent, I'm talking about a flat curve of, I think it came down to about 9.8 milliseconds or 10 milliseconds, something like that. 80 FPS flat, no more, no less. 80 FPS flat, and that took my frame times and it flattened it out. It became not as, but very close to a smooth experience, like when I had the G-Sync monitor, my ultra wide. And I sat there, it dispelled, getting to the to the end of it. I'm already coming up on 8 minutes talking about this, but getting to the end of it, it dispelled a lot of I guess things that I thought I knew about how FPS works. I thought that having the highest FPS was the best thing to have, and no, it's not the best thing. And it demystified a lot of myths that I had about having the best CPU, having the best GPU, and getting the most FPS. Again, on a 2080 Ti, I had to lock my FPS to 80 just so that I can have a playable experience on, for all intents and purposes, a pretty badass gaming rig. So I would say if you have a decent graphics card, and this is the whole premise to this is how I figured this out. If you have a pretty decent system and you don't have a G-Sync capable or a G-Sync moduled monitor, and you're thinking to yourself, man, playing these games suck because of stutter or jittery or whatever the case might be, do what I did. Find the average frame rate that you can keep. So let's say you can average 100 FPS in a game, no matter what section of the game you're at, no matter what's happening in the background, no matter what's happening in the foreground, no matter what's happening in a different part of the game. 100 FPS. But if you were to pull up the graph at MSI Afterburner and monitor your frame time, I would bet that it would go like that. So then start to reduce the FPS. You could do 5. I just went to 10. I started to reduce it by 10, right? But I would start at 5. Reduce it and cap it to 95. Then go back into the game, take a look at the frame time, and see if it's still going like this. And keep doing that, right? Keep reducing your frame rates until your frame time completely flattens out, right? Again, if you have a decent enough system, provided the title, if you're reaching FPS, I would say by the time you get to either 80 or 70 FPS, your frame time is gonna flatten out. And if you manage to do that and develop a better experience because you're no longer having that stutter or jitter or whatever the case might be, then I would challenge you, if you're considering buying a new graphics card or a new CPU because you think you're gonna have a better experience, don't even bother, wasting your money. If that's really what you do, do that. You have the money to do so, by all means. But I would give your hardware the opportunity to go ahead and perform for you before you decide to blindly upgrade because you saw the higher known YouTubers talk about average FPS and you think that that's gonna get you the best experience possible. No, take your frame times, flatten it out first and see if that doesn't improve for you. If it doesn't, right, hit me in the description. Hey, I tried this, that didn't work. I tried this, that didn't work. Whatever the case might be. Maybe list your specs. I might be able to help you out with determining if you have a bottleneck or whatever the case might be. And that's not to insult anybody's intelligence. I'm sure, if you know anything about computers, you'll be able to figure that out, do your own research, whatever the case might be. Try that. And forget about FPS. FPS is not king. Not anymore. I don't think that it is. Maybe in certain situations, but it is definitely not the end all be all. In any case, this video is already going on 13 minutes. Thank you for watching this long. Stay tuned for the next one. I don't know what the topic is going to be, but again, for those 13 subscribers that I have, put it in the description. What do you want me to make a video about? If I'm knowledgeable enough and the topic's clean enough, I'll go ahead and I'll make a video, a dedicated video to that. And again, I just do this as a hobby, which is why you don't see that many videos frequently from me. But as I said, going on 14 minutes. If you watch this long, thank you very much for watching. Stay tuned for the next one. Have a good afternoon.